Welcome to the Talking Army Football Podcast. I'm Sal Interdonado, your host, with a very special guest today, Ben Holden. He's the voice of Army football for CBS Sports Network. 7 games this year, right, Ben, you did?
Yeah, I think it was. I think that was the count because we had the game at Air Force, and that was a great one to call for Army, and to see them do what they did in that game was quite impressive. So yeah, it was 7, and I just finished. This was my 6th season doing the games at Mikey Stadium, and proud. And as I always say when I come on the air there, Sal, it's a pleasure and an honor, and it really is. So it's good to see the guys have some success now.
Yeah, you and I have both seen the rise of this program, Ben. I mean, if you would have told me a couple years back that this program would win 17 games in a span of 2 seasons, win a Commander-in-Chief's trophy, beat Navy twice, have that dominant performance against Air Force, I don't know. I mean, maybe like Coach Monken saw it in 2015, didn't he, when they went 2-10?
Yeah, he talked with us a lot about that, throughout the season. He went back to that season, and like one thing there's a lot of things that stick out over the getting to know the coordinators, Jay Bateman and Brent Davis, and obviously Jeff as well. And I'm sure you've heard this, but they don't have ready-made players, and it takes time, and that's. I tip my hat to the coaches and obviously the players for putting the work in, but for the coaches that are going out and finding the players, they're finding the great young men, and in the case of the football team that are going to the academy, and the women that are there too, obviously, and so it's really neat to see that, and there's a lot of guys that jumped off the screen all year to me this year that they're ready to go now. They're football players now to finish that point, and it's been fun to watch that progression, whether it's on the offensive side or the defensive side, or heck, you can go to the special team side, and a guy like Nick Schrag, who had his issues and made one of the biggest plays they had all year with that fake punt against Buffalo. So it's been a lot of fun to watch that, Sal.
Yeah, I can't believe the Army-Navy game was a week and a half ago. I was on the field to see that kick just go wide left and see another celebration for Army. And now, I mean, this is what they talked about, the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, getting it back to West Point. I saw a picture. Coach Dixon, linebackers coach, had a picture of it now in the football offices. That's going to help them in recruiting even more. And now here we are. The bowl game's finally here, Ben. And you've seen San Diego State 3 times this year, and Rashad Penny, and they're a 10-win team. San Diego State. Army's trying to be a 10-win team, and only one time in Academy history has Army team won 10 games, and that was in 1996. And
right,
this team's trying to do it, and just a solid bowl matchup, right? I mean, because you got the triple option offense versus a pretty good San Diego State defense, no doubt, and then you got Rashad. How does Army contain and stop Rashad Penny?
Well, that's a great question for Mr. Bateman. So. But, no, I mean, in this game, I say this jokingly as well. I mean, this game might be over in about 2 hours and 10 minutes, the way Army runs the ball, of course, and what Rashad Penny can do to neutralize a team. And when he's on, I mean, the performance he put on, Sal, against Nevada was, and I said this publicly, I said it on the air. I mean, I don't care who you're playing. The guy, think about this. The guy took back. He was going to throw a halfback option, and then he puts his foot in the ground. He goes all the way across the field. He takes that one in for a touchdown. I want to say it was 23 or 24 yards. So then Rocky Long decides, well, you know what? He's a senior. He's been bugging me to return a punt. Their guy, Quest Truxton, he had taken all 22 of their punt returns this year back, or been back for all 22 of them, I should say. So they put him back. He houses a 70-yard punt return. Then he goes back later in the game, takes back a 100-yard kickoff return, ties the NCAA record. He wasn't done. I think it was a 65, 66-yard touchdown run later in the game. And personally, since I've been a play-by-play guy, which I started that in 2004, so 13 or 14 years of doing that, been in the business for 23. But as a play-by-play guy, it was the single greatest individual performance I've ever called. And, I mean, I've seen a lot of great games, and whether it's football, basketball, hockey, lacrosse, you name it, One last year comes to mind at Mikey there with David Sims on the great win against Notre Dame, speaking of Army and great performances. But he is so hard to handle. And that's my question. Army's going to get theirs. I think even against Rocky Long's defense, which is very aggressive, they play the 4-2-5, and they got some players. And that'll be a challenge for them. The benefit for them, obviously, them being San Diego State, is they've got time to prepare for it. Rocky Long's got history with the option, the triple option going back to his days in New Mexico and all that. So I think that's $1 million question. Can they stop Rashad Penny and keep him from being the difference in the football game?
Yeah, I was talking to Jay Bateman last week about Rashad Penny, and he told me that he's talked to his players about leveraging the football and not allowing Rashad to cross their face. He says once he crosses your face, he's gone. And Ben, I asked him, and this was just an out there question. I'm like, how does Malcolm Perry compare to Rashad Penny? Because Malcolm Perry rushed for 250 yards against Army in their last game, in the snow, and he said there's no comparison because Penny's 220 pounds. Perry's more like 170 pounds, so it's just like, okay, you got to get this guy down even if you get to him, so even if you can catch him, so.
Well, I think, he's 5'11" and 220, and he's faster than he looks. I mean, I know that might sound funny, but he's the whole package. I think he's going to be a great pro, and there is no comparison. He puts his foot in the ground and he runs. And I said this during that Stanford game we did, and that was one of the most physical football games I've done in a long time. I mean, the two teams are really, think about it. If you want to be a tight end or you want to be a running back that runs out of the I formation with a fullback, and San Diego State's got a good one in Nick Bawden, and you're going to go to Stanford, you're going to go to San Diego State. There aren't many schools left that play the way they play. And they play incredibly physical, and it's a representation of their coach. I mean, he's an old school guy. I believe at one point they tried to get him to come to West Point back in the day because he was a heck of a player and a quarterback and all that. But they're just a physical team, and Penny is just that way. I mean, he'll run you over. I remember saying in that Stanford game, on one play, I mean, he took on three guys, and he took on their nose tackle, that Harrison Phillips, I believe is his name. And I mean, he's a 300-pound guy. And I remember saying he's running like a man possessed. And he is, Cole Christensen and James Nautigal, I think very highly of both those young men.
Yeah.
And they're going to be the guys that have to lead the charge. There's a lot of guys, but those two guys come to mind to me because they want to run it between the tackles. They don't try to get him outside too much, and they use their power and his power to try to accomplish that.
I was going to ask you, what happens when Rashad Penny meets Jimmy Hammerstick's Nautical on Saturday,
Well, Christensen too. I mean, and honestly, Sal, I was really impressed. Those guys, they had a lot of pressure on them. I think they never admit it, I don't think, but to step in and replace the guys that they replace, and we know, just for the record, Andrew King and Jeremy Tim for two of the best linebackers that have ever stepped foot and played at West Point, in my opinion, and they did a great job, and they really did. And I really like Christensen, and I like them both. I mean, they're both physical. They get after you. I thought Gibby Gibson got better each week for them. I really did. And he had that great play against Erickson, the going for two play against Eastern Michigan, and made just an amazing read on that play. And he got there with his speed, and he's a physical guy. And I just, those guys to me, everybody's key, but those guys to me are going to be really key. And, the guys up front, let's not forget about 21 and 59. I mean, they're two seniors that have played a ton of football, and they're physical guys. And so I think it's going to be a great matchup. I really do.
I thought it was great in the Army-Navy game just to backpedal a little bit for John Voight to kind of have his moment. Ben, I mean, he's been there, he's been a 4-year pretty much starter and a 3-year guy who's really been the heart and soul of their defense, especially up front, taking on double teams, triple teams. He sometimes in their defense, he's sometimes in their pass defense. You want to call it a nickel? He's their only defensive lineman left on the field. And we saw why, and when he chased down Perry on that play.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I chat with a buddy of mine that does a show up in Lansing every week in my hometown on Wednesdays usually, and he asked me about that, the game and all the great plays, and I said, that was one play that wasn't mentioned, Sal, and I said, if he doesn't make that tackle, I think it's a different game, because I think they take it in and they score, and I don't know if there's enough time for Army to come back the way they did, and what a great job by Ahmad leading them again, but that was one heck of a play, and I'll add another one to that list about John, who the senior class. This is my second class there. Think of that. You've been there longer than me, but he's one of those seniors, and that play he made, and they go back to that Eastern Michigan game because remember they kicked that onside kick.
Yeah,
and I knew right away it was him, and Jay looked at me, and I was like, "It's 59, trust me," and it was, and that was another huge play that he made. But that play in the Navy game, that was his defining moment as an Army football player, in my opinion. And what a great young guy, and I'd take him on my team any day of the week, man, no matter if it's playing football, whatever it is. And he's not the only one there, believe me, because I got close to a lot of those guys over the last few years, and I think very highly of John, and for him to make that play, it says a lot about him as an athlete. So that was one for the archives for sure.
No doubt. Before we have to bring up Ahmad Bradshaw this year. He's had a really special season running the football for Army and leading the team too. And you saw San Diego State going against Air Force against a kind of a triple option team. What do you think about that matchup with Ahmad versus San Diego State? We know that the fullbacks are going to get some play for Army. We know that Woolfolk and Davison will have their moments and stuff. How do you see that matchup going with the option versus the San Diego State defense?
Sorry, yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's one that like I said, I think Army will get theirs just because they're so good at what they do. The guys that really stand out for me on San Diego State defensively are Cameron Kelly, great speed, Tariq Thompson, who's a freshman, who they just put him right into the starting spot, and all of a sudden, bam, he's there. Parker Baldwin, who plays their Aztec spot's a really good player. And Laka-Laka's, like his name says, he'll do that too when he tackles you. He's all business, man. And those guys, to me, are the highlight players on their team. I mean, they've got a couple guys up front, but the speed of their defense is more than I think probably Ohio State, of course. But thinking back on Army's schedule, maybe Duke, just because they have a higher level of athletes than some of the other teams they played. And I think those guys are just they're gonna be tough. Trey Lomax and other guys. I'm looking at my last chart from my last game with them, and they use the speed, and they're all physical. Every single one of their guys is physical. I mean, it's going to be a very physical game. I think from Army's standpoint, because Army's defense is going to play physical, and they're going to have to be in that game, and I know they're capable of doing that. I've seen it. So have you, and so have the fans, and. So I think from that standpoint, it's going to be mano a mano. I mean, for lack of better words, man. But I think Ahmad will do fine. I do. He's so good. The thing that I love about watching him, he's in 3 years of being the leader of that offense, and it's not an easy offense to run, as we know. But when it works, it's a thing of beauty. And the thing that I noticed the most about him this year, Sal, was just the timing he had. We always talk about timing in life, whether it's about a job or you meet somebody or whatever. But when you're talking timing in the triple option, he would hold. I don't know how many times this year I said he held it until the last second. And 9 out of 10 times, maybe even 9.5 out of 10 times, his instinct was right on, and that ball was where it needed to be, and it avoided a loss or a negative play or potentially a turnover. And just so impressed with him and the way he does that, his instinct and his timing and his patience and his guts and, his discipline too.
Yeah, you look at toughness. Ben, we've covered this team for a while now, and when's the last time really an Army quarterback has gotten through all 12 games, starting all 12 games? We might have to go back to Steelman days, and I mean, the toughness of him, it doesn't even seem like you see him get hit, but he's just got a little bit stronger this year, and he doesn't even seem like, I don't really see a limp out of him in games or anything like that. He just gets right back up, gets back under center, and runs the offense, and I think that's really been key too, because even last year, he did miss the Notre Dame game. Chris Carter started. That was probably almost by design. They wanted to just make sure he was healthy enough to play against, Navy in the final game, but his toughness is off the charts.
Yeah, it is, and to that point, that's a great point, and that's a huge reason why Army's sitting where they're sitting. Excuse me, and it's a huge reason why they've had the wins they've had, why they beat Navy again, and why Army's had the success they've had offensively. But I'll add to that, and you know this, and the offensive line for the most part. This was the first year I was there in 6 that they really played with the same 5 guys. I mean, there was, Deaton played a little bit, and there were a couple guys here and there, but for the most part, it was all 5 guys up front. I mean, and that's key too. And so, I think that along with Ahmad's ability to stay healthy, and I think a lot of that too has to do with, him getting rid of the ball, and him, I always use this phrase too, he slithers, he finds a way. And he always falls forward, as we know, but his ability to just slither and knife through and get extra yards is really impressive to me. But the whole group, they just tip of the hat to the whole group. I mean, the fullbacks and, just the depth they built, as much as it hurt having Darnell Woolfolk hurt in that Ohio State game, and obviously it took a toll on England, and, there were a few other nicks in that game. But that, to me, was a blessing in a way, because it allowed some other guys to get some time, like Slumka, and he's a beast, as we know, and I wouldn't want to tackle him. I want to see him go head-to-head with Laka. That'll be a fun matchup, trust me. But, that allowed them to get some of that depth in there that they haven't had, and, start calling them fullback you.
Really, I know it. And you know what? I wrote a column, I think last week, about this is not – they're pretty built for the long haul here. Ben, they're not. I mean, yes, you're going to lose Voigt and Ackerman and England on defense, and those are guys that have been playing for a while. They're great leaders, but you have a lot returning on defense, and the offensive line has to be rebuilt a little bit. But you get back a lot of your skilled players. I mean, and like you said, the depth. This is not like a fluke here. These 2 seasons, they're pretty built to be maybe possibly on top of Service Academy football again next season with what they return. So.
No, I think it's a good point, and I'd find it hard to disagree with you. I mean, the big question, who's going to be the quarterback and all that, but, they'll deal with that once they get through the bowl game and into spring. But, yeah, I think they are built, and they are set up, and, guys like that we mentioned earlier, like Nautigal and Christensen, those guys are young. They stepped in. They showed they can play, and, again, Gibby Gibson and, if there's anybody I'm forgetting, please hit me on that. Elijah Riley, he's another young guy that I think's got a great upside, and McClinton, he's another one for sure. And so I think they are set up, and the staff's been there 4 years. They've got their systems in place. They've got their guys, and let's be honest. I mean, they can walk in now and say, "Hey, we won the CIC." They haven't been able to do that in 21 years, man. Yeah. So. That's a big recruiting tool for the guys there, for the staff, and all the great coaches and great men that go out and recruit, and so to me it's so awesome to see. I mean, I remember my first couple years there, Sal. I was like, "What is going on, man?" It was, it was tough at times, and you've been covering them a long time, and so. I take great pride in doing their games. I mean, I really do. If you would have told me 20 years ago that one day I'd be the home voice of Army football, I would have never believed you. Yeah. And it means a lot to me to go there and to do their games, and for all the people, the men and women that serve our country, and for what the men and women at West Point are there for. And, I get into conversations all the time with buddies back here on the road, like, a couple years ago, and they were 2-10, like you said, and they're like, "What's the problem? Why aren't they any good?" And I'm like, "Well, it takes time." And I said, but the biggest thing, and this better than anybody, they're there to play football, but it's not the first reason they're there.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, and I have the ultimate respect for that. I served 2 years in the Navy, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I served my country and I learned a lot of great things. And, to be able to, be a small part of what they've been doing the last few years is pretty neat. So it's a pretty cool feeling.
No doubt. Just one more thing before we sign off here.
Sure.
A guy I think about when you talk about that stuff is Kenneth Brinson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A guy who's a 4.06 student who was a academic first team academic All-American just named last week, and you look at like him. I talked to him last week at practice, and he was like literally like a guy who's never got lower than an A in his life. Was a little bit not scared, but he was a little bit taken aback by having to take like 5 finals in 3 days at West Point before they hopped on a plane to Fort Worth. So I mean, and what the results of those exams were going to be. I mean, he tutors there. It's
wow.
It's really, he's a real neat kid. He's a really humble kid. And I asked him about being like probably first captain maybe of the Corps next year or in the top leadership positions in the Corps. He's like, there's probably better students that can handle that than me.
He is incredibly humble. You're right. Yeah, I'd be the first one since Whittington in 2012, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great. I mean, I could see that happening too. And he's a guy. I mean, forgive me. I mean, he's another guy that. That's made some big plays and has really progressed. And, Bateman was high on him when he brought him in. And, there's so many great stories there. I mean, there's not enough time to talk about the great human beings that I've met there at West Point. And, I think they're in great hands with Jeff Monken. I think he's come in and he's done what a lot of people didn't think he could do. Yeah. And they believed, the players believed, they all bought in. The whole academy bought in. I mean, it was, our games there this year on CBS Sports Network we had some classics, man. We had some of the best games that we've ever had there, and we had some of the best games that were on the network this year. And
electric. It was electric there. At times.
It was. I mean, he's picking up chairs, and a funny story, if I may. We have time.
Sure, absolutely.
So I have over my desk. So I have I live in a condo, so my desk is in my living room. So I just have a small place because I travel, and I have what I call my motivational wall. So I've got the 17th hole at TPC at Sawgrass. I got a ski jump that I climbed with Tom Izzo, the autographed. I've got the 1980 Miracle on Ice original Sports Illustrated that I kept since I was a kid when I was 9. A couple other things, Steve Eisman with a cup. And then I have the Army UConn flip card from Yankee Stadium, that great game that was there. And then I have Jeff Monken holding a green chair framed. I gave it was funny this year. So after that game, I think we were there the next week.
Yeah.
And I came in, I had a picture for everybody, all the guys on our crew, Jay, John, Bruce Clark, our producer, Warren Pick, our director, my son, my girlfriend, and I slid the folder to Jeff because we all just thought it was great,
Yeah.
And I said, hey man, here's a Sharpie, you're gonna need this. And he opened, he's like, you gotta be kidding me. And he signed every one of them, man. And that's on my wall. He wrote, "Get fired up, beat Navy, Jeff Monken." So I mean,
that's great.
Go from where they were and where they came into to see him doing that, and the passion and fire that he brings to the program, the academy, to service academy football is it's pretty awesome, man. So thanks for letting me share that. So I want to get that in.
Ben, we saw it a couple years back. He actually, after a halftime, ran out onto the field and ran into the stands to fire up the Corps cadets. I mean, how many coaches do that in one
Not many.
football? I don't think any. I think he's the only one. I think.
Yeah, you might be right, Sal. I mean, he's got a great passion for the place, and he's beloved now. He's beaten Navy 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
They haven't done that since the 90s. And, you mentioned that 96 year, and it was funny going through everything that happened went back to that 96 team. And, I've gotten to know Tony Bianchi, who Jay Feely, my partner at Army, and for a lot of my football games, Jay and Tony are both from Tampa. And, he came up to the booth that last game, the last home game, and he thanked us, and he gave us this incredible medallion. It was like something you'd see. It's probably something that you get for a great accomplishment at West Point or something. And I mean, that meant the world to me. I mean, that was just, I was like, Tony, man, that's just so nice of you. And he's like, we are so glad you guys are here. We're glad they're winning. And the whole 96 team wants to see them break every single record, man. I mean, it was powerful, man. It was really cool. And I met some amazing people there and like Tony and, as I mentioned, a lot of other people too. So it was neat.
No doubt. I just want to mention this because I know that, the crazy carousel of coaches is pretty much done with. But when it was spinning around, Monken's name got floated out a little bit. And you just look at, Nebraska fans wanted Jeff Monken to coach their team at one point.
They want to go back to the old days, man. Johnny Rodgers, Mike Rozier.
They did. And you know what? You mentioned the passion. We mentioned the passion he has. I think deep down, I asked him when he signed a contract extension in September. I asked him if he could see if this could be his last coaching job, and he told me yes. And he's like, you mentioned the 96 teams, and you can even go back as far as when they're national championship teams in the 40s. I think he wants to be one of the more successful coaches at Army when he's said and done. And I don't know if we can mention him with Red Blake, but he wants to be right there with Jim Young and Bob Sutton. And he's closing in on those guys right now. So I don't see him going anywhere. Yeah,
you know what? I agree with you. I think I really believe that. I believe that he wants to stay there for a long time, and he keeps doing what he's doing. I mean, he's not going to have any problem staying. So he's going to get more. I think they're going to get more recruits as a result of the last couple of years. As we know, and those that follow Army and the academies, it's pretty much the same pool of players. And I think kids want to be wowed. I mean, I'm going through that with my son. He's a junior. He's being recruited by some schools for lacrosse, and give you an example. Yesterday he met a coach that I know through hockey back here in Michigan, and he's a lacrosse coach, and he's like, yeah, man, we get 3 sets of gear, and my son's eyes perked up, but they want to be wowed. I mean, that's what these young men and women that are playing sport, no matter where you're at, no matter if you're at, like I say, a quote unquote, how do I say this? I mean, the academies are different because there's so much, and I mean that with all due the utmost respect. You go to a normal college where it's a regular college life, which is not what it is at West Point. It's not what it is in the Air Force or the Navy. We know it's different. Yeah. And I think now, with what he's done and the program's done, he just continues to solidify himself. And personally, I'd love to see him stay there for a long time. And he's great for Army football. He's turned it around, and him and his staff. And he's a great man to us. And we certainly had a lot of fun with him this year, and we've had fun with him every year. But this year was special, man. There was something special about this year, and it was a lot of fun to, like I said, Sal, to be a small part of it.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, we look forward to we'll call maybe a smash mouth football game there on Saturday between the Aztecs and the Black Knights in the Armed Forces Bowl, Ben. And thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it. Such great insight, great conversation, and hope to do it again soon.
Thanks, Sal. You too, and always appreciate your time and talking with you. And thanks for having me on. And go Army, beat Navy, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks a lot,
man. There you go. You bet.